Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Raisha Sehgal. On the show today, US President-elect Donald Trump spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin and urged him not to escalate the war in Ukraine. He further reminded Putin of America's sizable military deployment in Europe. The question being, what is Trump's Ukraine peace plan? And can Trump end the war in 24 hours after assuming office like he has promised? We will be tracking that on the show today.
Of course, a lot of claims have been made by Trump already. As of now, we will also be tracking the developments in West Asia right here for you on World DNA. Israeli strikes killed dozens of people in Lebanon and Gaza, and this comes ahead of a US deadline for improved aid delivery to the Palestinian territory. Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu has said that he has spoken with US President-elect Donald Trump 3 times since Trump won the elections pertaining to the Iranian threat towards Israel. This and a lot more lined up for you right here on World DNA. Let's start with the headlines.
US President-elect Donald Trump demands Republican lawmakers should allow him to appoint key officials without a Senate confirmation vote, as Republicans pick new leader after taking control of the House.
Donald Trump speaks to Vladimir Putin, urges Russian president not to escalate the war in Ukraine, says reports citing sources.
Israeli airstrikes killed dozens in Lebanon, claimed rescuers and local officials. Raids come ahead of a US deadline for improved aid supply into the territory.
Israeli authorities urge fans to avoid Thursday's France-Israel football tie following violence in Amsterdam after a match between an Israeli team and a local one.
Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba faces parliament vote. Ishiba expected to keep his job but with a fragile minority government after losing majority in last month's election.
Pakistan suspends train operations to and from Quetta station day after an explosion that left 26 people dead and dozens others injured.
It's official, India will not travel to Pakistan for the 2025 Champions Trophy. PCB is now seeking advice from the Pakistan government on how to proceed with the tournament. Our top focus in WION right now, US President-elect Donald Trump has urged Russian President Vladimir Putin not to escalate the war in Ukraine, claims a new report.
And meanwhile, according to another report, Trump is likely to call on European soldiers to enforce a buffer zone between the Russian and Ukrainian armies as part of his plan to end the war.
During the phone call with Putin, Trump reminded the Russian president of America's sizable military deployment in Europe. The Washington Post reported, citing several people who were familiar with the call. As per the report, Trump held the call from his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida on Thursday.
The call came a day after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke with Trump, with the Republicans' billionaire backer Elon Musk also notably joining them on the call. Now, Zelensky described the call as excellent, saying that he and Trump had agreed to maintain close dialogue and advance cooperation. During his campaign, Trump repeatedly vowed to quickly end the Ukraine war, but without detailing his thinking on how he's going to do that. However, the Telegraph reported this week that Trump's peace plan for Ukraine would see the current frontline frozen in place and Ukraine agreeing to shelve its ambition to join NATO.
In exchange, the US would reportedly provide Ukraine weapons to deter Russia from restarting the war. The outgoing Democratic administration of President Joe Biden has confirmed that it will send as much aid as possible to Ukraine before Trump's inauguration on January 20th. This would include using the remaining $6 billion of funding which is available for Ukraine.
Now, these developments come as the war nears the 1,000-day mark and Russia and Ukraine launched their biggest drone attacks on each other.
Ukraine launched a drone strike on Moscow, its biggest attack on the Russian capital since the beginning of the war in 2022. The fierce onslaught forced the temporary shutdown of two of the city's major airports, injuring at least one person.
Russian officials claimed to have shot down 34 Ukrainian drones flying towards Moscow over the Ramenskoye and Kolomenskoye districts of the Moscow region, as well as Domodedovo city, home to one of the city's biggest airports.
Though Moscow reported no major damage, Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency said that 3 airports had to divert flights.
Moscow and its surrounding region, with a population of at least 21 million people, is one of the biggest metropolitan areas in Europe alongside Istanbul. Kolomensky is an administrative and municipal district located nearly 20 kilometers from Moscow. The Ramenskoye district, some 45 kilometers southeast of the Kremlin, was last targeted by Ukraine in September in what was then the biggest attack on the Russian capital.
Ukraine, on the other hand, claims at least 2 people were injured in a Russian drone attack on the Odessa region. Ukraine's Air Force claims its air defenses downed 62 out of 145 Russian drones launched on 13 regions of the war-torn country, including Odessa. Russian officials have not yet commented on the attack yet.
For the 4th night in a row, the enemy targets our city. There were several drones, you all know and see what's going on today. Luckily, there are no victims, but there are injured people. There are many damaged residences and apartments. Private houses were destroyed. People have to be on the street now.
All right, for more on this, we are now being joined live by Dov Zakhem. He is the Senior Advisor at Center for Strategic and International Studies and former Under Secretary of Defense in the George W. Bush administration. Mr. Zakhem, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA. Sir, there are big claims made by Trump. Of course, he said, I'll do it in one day. We've heard that umpteen number of times. And the calls with Putin after becoming president-elect, those have already started. They've just been reported. How do you feel Trump is going to make this happen if he is trying to do it, to end the war between the two sides?
I think what Trump is trying to do is emulate Ronald Reagan. If you recall, Reagan was able to get the hostages in Tehran freed essentially the day he was inaugurated. Most of the work was actually done by the Jimmy Carter people, but it was Reagan who completed it. I think that's what Trump sort of has in mind. Obviously, telling Zelensky that everything would stop in place means that Zelensky loses a good part of his eastern oblasts. But, you know, both Zelensky and Putin have something to worry about. Everybody knows what Zelensky wants to worry about, which is that Trump will stop supplying Ukraine with weapons. And of course, now, according to this report, Trump is dangling the prospect that he will continue to send weapons to Ukraine. But Putin also has something to worry about. And that is, if Putin does not go along with pretty much what Trump asks for, Trump being Trump could turn around and essentially say, you didn't do what I wanted, Therefore, I will go ahead and support the Ukrainians far more even than Biden has. And I would point out that although Joe Biden will take about $4 billion from what's called Drawdown Authority and another $2 billion from the Special Ukrainian Fund, he's got the money, he can send it. What he hasn't yet said is that he would let the Europeans who want to send more equipment and allow the Europeans to essentially tell the Ukrainians, you can hit Russia wherever you want. It's difficult for them to do because many of these equipments have American components. And so Biden has a veto. Biden needs to lift that veto. The combination of doing that and sending more equipment for $6 billion worth will make it a lot easier for Trump to pressure both sides.
Mr. Zakim, while you have outlined what's at risk both for Putin and Zelensky, I just want to talk about Trump's Ukraine peace plan, which includes an 800-mile buffer zone by the European and the British soldiers and a 2-decade freeze on Ukraine's NATO ambitions. Basically, he wants Ukraine's neutrality in the ongoing war, and he also says and has asked Zelensky to give up hopes of getting back Crimea. Keeping all this in mind, do you think that this is perhaps a viable path to peace or an appeasement that risks sacrificing European security? Because there is skepticism growing in Europe as to how European nations could continue supporting Ukraine without any kind of US support, because Trump has clearly said that there would be no active combat of US troops in the war zone.
Well, for a start, there isn't really much U.S. combat right now in the war zone. The real issue is, does the United States continue to provide weapons, materiel, what the Ukrainians need? And essentially what Trump is now saying is that he would be prepared to do so under certain conditions. Now, the 800-mile buffer zone sounds pretty good. Not getting into NATO, let's be realistic. NATO has not invited Ukraine yet. They keep talking about it, but they haven't done it. What hasn't been mentioned is that Ukraine could join the EU, which, by the way, has its own defense provisions. Putin might go along with that if, in fact, Ukraine reaches some kind of economic arrangement with Russia that allows Russia essentially to sell to the EU and would get sanctions lifted. There are lots of things still that have to be worked out. After all said and done, we're all talking about a report in a newspaper that has not been fully confirmed and in any event has a lot of details missing. But what Trump is trying to do is essentially to model Ronald Reagan and say, indeed, on my first day of office, I will have reached some kind of arrangement between both Ukraine and Russia, the way Reagan was able to reach an arrangement with Iran to get the hostages out.
Mr. Zakim, Rehisha mentioned something very pertinent here, that is the European angle, and I wanted you to just take it a little further from there. My point here being, do you feel Europe would be watching all of Trump's actions and his claims and his all that he's proposing with a lot of caution at this point? And we have already seen, we've got those feelers from Europe already. The summit which is going on, France, the president, of course, Macron, he mentioned something in his tweet. What about European security? When you take that and you see what Trump is proposing, that he'll have a buffer zone and have European soldiers standing face to face with Russia there, or at least in close quarters, because there are no US troops there, European soldiers standing in front and US only backs from behind. So it actually pushes Europe more into the face of Russia. So even if Russia agrees to this, do you feel Europe would agree if this is the peace term?
Well, I think the Europeans obviously would have to have a say in all of this. And I suspect that the European position would be that Trump drop all his objections to NATO, that the United States continue to play the role it has always played since the creation of NATO back in 1949, and that there be a clear assurance that if their troops are there, that the United States would come to the aid of the Europeans if Putin shoots at them. The only way that happens, of course, is if the United States is fully committed to its NATO allies. So there'll have to be a quid pro quo, not just with Russia and Ukraine, but with the Europeans. There's no way Macron is right. there's no way the Europeans are going to do anything along the lines of what Trump wants unless they get something in return. And what they want in return is the American security guarantee that's always been there and that has to be ironclad.
Mr. Zakim, very quickly, one last reaction I wanted from you. What do you feel Elon Musk was doing on that call between Trump and Zelensky, as reports are suggesting?
Well, Elon Musk, after all said and done, did help Zelensky out, and then he stopped with the Starlink satellite connections. Zelensky owes Musk, and I suspect that Trump brought Musk in as a subtle message to Zelensky that if Zelensky is not willing at least to consider Trump's proposal, he may have problems getting support from Musk. Obviously, Musk is the world's richest man. He has a lot of clout. He has all sorts of ways to make life even more miserable for the Ukrainians if he wanted to. Alternately, he could be very helpful to them. Look, Trump is nobody's fool. People have underestimated his. They say that he changes his mind overnight or he's very transactional. That may be true, but that doesn't mean he's a fool. And that doesn't mean he doesn't know how to negotiate. And he definitely wants to demonstrate that he is a master negotiator and, in fact, would very much like to get the Nobel Peace Prize that Theodore Roosevelt got for making peace between Japan and Russia in the late 19th century.
Mr. Zakim, thank you so much for joining us here on World DNA, sharing all your insights and picking on those subtle indications that come through in these geopolitical actions and, of course, maneuvers that are taking place at this point. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A wave of Israeli airstrikes killed dozens of people in Lebanon and Gaza. Rescuers in the Gaza Strip said 13 children were among 30 killed by Israeli strikes in the territory's north.
Well, in Lebanon, the health ministry said an Israeli strike on Almat village north of Beirut killed 23 people, including 7 children. The health ministry reported at least another 15 dead in strikes in the east. 3 Hezbollah-affiliated rescuers were killed in the south. Both areas were where the Iran-backed group has a strong presence.
هيدا يا شباب حد منا بالست زينب.
Another strike south of the Syrian capital, Damascus, killed 9 people, including a Hezbollah commander. In recent weeks, Israel has killed several of the Lebanese group's commanders, prompting the new defense minister, Israel Katz, to claim that the country has already defeated the group. He labeled the elimination of Hassan Nasrallah as the crowning achievement.
Just days before his killing, several others of the group's high-ranking officials were killed or wounded after thousands of pagers and walkie-talkies exploded simultaneously in Lebanon as well as Syria. Now, Israel admitted for the first time on Sunday that it was behind the wave of attacks on the communications devices.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu green-lighted the operation, according to his spokesperson. Meanwhile, amid retaliation threats from Iran for attack on its soil and that of its proxies, Netanyahu spoke to US President-elect Donald Trump for the 3rd time over the past few days. Netanyahu's office said he and Trump see eye to eye on the Iranian threat in every aspect.
This as the Arab Islamic Summit is scheduled to take place in the Saudi capital Riyadh today to discuss the continued Israeli aggression on Gaza and Lebanon, as well as the prevailing tensions in West Asia.
Amid the tension, Israel's National Security Council has called on Israelis to avoid attending sports, cultural events involving Israelis, with an emphasis on the upcoming match of the Israeli national team in Paris. This after violence in Amsterdam at the end of a match between an Israeli team and a local team. About dozens were injured in the violence, which took place on Saturday.
A wave of scandals has swept the Australian Parliament after the staff made 30 complaints of serious workplace offences, including sexual assault, over 9 months.
The Australian Parliament staff have sought speedy redressal of the issue and also strict punishments of the culprits.
Now, the claims of serious wrongdoing included sexual assault, as I mentioned earlier, stalking and intimidation. And the local media reports did not reveal if any of the cases had been referred to the police or were being prosecuted. Notably, the Parliamentary Workplace Support Service opened in October 2023 as a confidential service for federal parliament workers. It received 30 reports of serious wrongdoing out of 339 cases in its initial 9 months of operation from October 2023 to June 2024. In 2023, an Australian senator had said she had been followed aggressively and inappropriately touched by another senator.
The service was established after a 2021 government report which found that 1 in 3 people working in Australia's parliament located in the capital Canberra had experienced sexual harassment in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just after 10 a.m. this morning, President.
Japan's lawmakers will decide today whether Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba remains the country's leader after his coalition lost its parliamentary majority in a lower house election late last month.
Ishiba is expected to remain in the job but will be running a fragile minority government. Ishiba had called the snap polls after coming into office on October 1st. His Liberal Democratic Party and coalition partner Koimito won the biggest block of seats in the election while losing the majority held since 2012. Voters unhappy with inflation and a slush fund scandal that helped sink his predecessor Fumio Kishida delivered the party its worst result since 2009, which could perhaps cause political gridlock in a hung parliament.
The small opposition Democratic Party for the People, DPP, has emerged as a kingmaker after the election. It has declined to enter a formal coalition with the LDP, but may offer support on a policy-by-policy basis. However, DPP chief Yuichiro Tamaki told reporters on Friday that party members would not vote for Ishiba at Monday's special parliamentary session. Former Prime Minister Yoshihiko Noda, the head of the biggest opposition party, is also expected to be among the candidates put forward as premier. If, as expected, no candidate wins a majority initially, a runoff between the top 2 contenders will determine the eventual winner. Such a runoff has not been held in 30 years.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump's US election victory could further complicate matters for Ishiba. You may wonder why. That's because some Japanese officials fear that Trump might again hit Tokyo with protectionist trade measures and revive demands for it to pay more towards the cost of stationing US forces in the country. All these issues were largely smoothed over earlier in Trump's first term by the close ties between the president and Japan's then Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, a bond that Ishiba seems keen to re-establish. It's now time for a quick short break, but don't go anywhere. On the other side of World DNA, we'll get your story from Sri Lanka, where ahead of parliamentary elections in Sri Lanka, President Anurakumara Dissanayake has vowed to stop Indian fishermen from illegally fishing in Sri Lankan waters.
Also on the other side, a report on a junior commissioned officer of the Indian Army who was killed on Sunday while 3 other commandos were injured in a gun battle with terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir. We'll bring you a complete detailed report on that front as well. This and a lot more on the other side. Come right back. This is World DNA.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate tracker on WION World is One.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the US.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
WION brings you a special business talk show where we bring forth the stories of business leaders.
From breakthrough technologies to visionary leadership. We will unlock the trends, the tactics, and dive into the minds of the industry's most influential leaders.
WION brings you this special series to uncover what drives them in a candid talk show, WION Business Masters.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Welcome back. You're watching WION World is One and World DNA with me, Raisha, and that's my colleague Shivan. Lots line up on the show, but first a quick check on the headlines.
Arab and Muslim leaders arrive in Saudi Arabia for summit today to discuss the ongoing wars in Gaza and Lebanon.
Donald Trump speaks to Vladimir Putin, urges Russian president not to escalate the war in Ukraine, says report citing sources.
Israeli authorities urge fans to avoid Thursday's France-Israel football tie following violence in Amsterdam after a match between an Israeli team and a local one.
Japan's Prime Minister Ishiba faces parliament vote. Ishiba expected to keep his job with a fragile minority government after losing majority in last month's election.
It's official, India will not travel to Pakistan for the 2025 Champions Trophy. PCB is now seeking advice from the Pakistan government on how to proceed with the tournament.
Over the South China Sea now, China has formally rejected new maritime claims from the Philippines, stating that they severely infringe on its territorial integrity.
This comes after Filipino President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. signed legislation to define the country's maritime entitlements and establish sea lanes aimed at reinforcing Filipino sovereignty.
China, however, asserts that the South China Sea, including the Scarborough Shoal or Huangyan Island, is a part of its own territory, a claim that has been the source of tension between the two countries for years.
Now, in a statement, China's foreign ministry announced a baseline of territorial waters around Scarborough Shoal, promising to take all necessary measures to defend its claims. China's Coast Guard has also accused the Philippines of sending military vessels into the area and engaging in illegal fishing. The Philippines, backed by a 2016 international ruling, maintains that the area lies within its exclusive economic zone. With the US supporting Manila, global attention is on this strategic region as the disputes continue to escalate. Let's shift focus to Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayake, AKD, has assured Tamils that their land occupied by the Sri Lankan government would be returned to them.
Addressing a rally ahead of the November 14th parliamentary polls, Dissanayake also took a firm stance against Indian fishermen illegally fishing in Sri Lankan waters.
Now, this was Disanayake's first public meeting in Jaffna since coming to office in September. Tamils in Sri Lanka have been agitating to reclaim their lands that state agencies, including the archaeology and forest departments, have forcibly taken over.
He said Indian fishermen were destroying the marine resources that belong to the Tamil populated northern region of Sri Lanka, stating that his government will ensure that such exploitation of marine resources does not happen and will protect the rights of Sri Lankan fishermen. The fishermen issue is a contentious one between India and Sri Lanka, with Lankan Navy personnel even firing at Indian fishermen in the Park Strait and seizing their boats in several alleged incidents of illegally entering Sri Lankan territorial waters.
The Park Strait, a narrow strip of water separating Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka, is a rich fishing ground for fishermen from both countries. Just last month, the Sri Lankan Navy had arrested 12 Indian fishermen and seized their trawler for allegedly poaching in its territorial waters. With these arrests, the number of Indian nationals apprehended this year by Sri Lanka is in such incidents has risen to 462.
Shifting our focus to India now, a junior commissioned officer, also known as JCO, of the Indian Army was killed on Sunday, while 3 other commandos were injured in a gun battle with terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir's Kishtwar district.
Well, the martyred officer belongs to the 2 Para Special Forces unit. The gun battle marks the 3rd exchange of fire between the security forces and terrorists in 24 hours. Intermittent exchange of fire is continuing during a joint operation of the police and army in the Zabarwan forest area in Srinagar. Authorities say that 3 to 4 terrorists are still trapped in the area.
The operation was launched on the basis of specific inputs regarding the presence of terrorists in the area. Now, this comes after 2 village defense guards in Kishtwar region were killed on Thursday this week. The deceased were identified as Nazir Ahmed and Kuldeep Kumar.
2 other encounters broke out in Sopore on Friday and Saturday. This is in the Baramulla district. On Saturday, a terrorist was killed in an encounter in the Rampora area of Baramulla district. Security concerns have escalated in Jammu and Kashmir following a series of terror strikes after the formation of the government under the National Conference in Jammu and Kashmir.
Justice Sanjeev Khanna will be sworn in as the 51st Chief Justice of India today.
President Draupadi Murmu will administer the oath of office at Rashtrapati Bhavan in a ceremony scheduled at 10 a.m.
The centre officially notified Justice Khanna's appointment on October 24th, following Chief Justice Chandrachud's recommendation on October 16th. This, as per convention, where the retiring Chief Justice recommends the second most senior judge, a successor. Justice Khanna will serve a tenure of 6 months, concluding with his retirement on May 13th, 2025.
64-year-old Justice Khanna has a degree in law from the University of Delhi. He enrolled as a lawyer with the Bar Council of Delhi back in 1983. He initially practiced at the district courts at the Tisazari complex and later in the High Court of Delhi and tribunals. In 2005, he was elevated as an additional judge of the Delhi High Court, and a year later, he was made a permanent judge. In 2019, he was elevated as a judge of the Supreme Court.
While serving as a judge in the Supreme Court, Justice Khanna also held the post of chairman, the Supreme Court Legal Service Committee from June 2023 to December 2023. In his time so far at the Apex Court, Justice Khanna has been a part of several important verdicts. He was a part of the 5-judge bench that upheld the landmark judgment of the Delhi High Court to bring the Chief Justice of India's office under right to information.
Now, he was also part of the bench that ruled in favour of the government with regards to abrogation of Article 370, which gave a special status to Jammu and Kashmir. Justice Khanna was also part of the bench that cleared the Central Vista redevelopment project. Stuck on the International Space Station since months, Indian-American astronaut Sunita Williams, along with Butch Wilmore, continues to face delays in their return to Earth.
Right, Shivan. What has become alarmingly is the seemingly visible signs of weight loss by the astronaut. In the latest pictures released by NASA, Sunita Williams is showing drastic weight loss. Williams has been stranded on the International Space Station along with fellow astronaut Wilmore after 5 of the 28 thrusters of their Starliner spacecraft failed in June this year during their approach to the ISS.
Both Williams and Wilmore are scheduled to return to Earth in February 2025. Launched on 5th of June, their Boeing Starliner spacecraft test flight landed on the International Space Station, the ISS, on the 6th of June. The Boeing Starliner experienced several glitches even before its launch earlier this year. NASA and Boeing discovered helium leaks at first, and there were also complaints with spacecraft reaction control thrusters on June 6th. The Boeing Starliner mission was intended to demonstrate the spacecraft's capability to safely carry people to and from the ISS. However, the helium leaks have made it unsafe for travel, as the structural integrity and maneuverability of the spacecraft depend on it.
Many of you were waving flags at us. And then as we reach the pad, we look up, and of course there's that American flag.
On the world of business now, India's fuel exports to the European Union surged by 58% in the first 3 quarters of 2024, largely powered by refined Russian crude oil.
And this increase aligns with a significant rise in India's imports of discounted Russian oil, which accounts for nearly 40% of India's total crude purchases. Since sanctions on Russian oil imports by the EU and G7 were introduced, India's role as a major refining hub has expanded. The country has met Europe's diesel demand while sidestepping direct restrictions on Russian crude itself. According to the Centre for Research on Energy and Clean Air, India is now the EU's top supplier of oil products, surpassing pre-war import levels by nearly double. Indian refineries, heavily reliant on Russian crude, contributed to this export surge.
From December 2022, EU countries and other price cap nations imposed a $60 per barrel limit on Russian oil, aiming to curb Kremlin's revenues. However, the price cap does not apply to refined fuels produced from Russian crude, which are being exported to Europe at full price. CREA reports that India's exports derived from Russian oil have totaled over $7.7 billion since the cap's implementation, with shadow fleets transporting over 80% of Russian crude to circumvent the sanctions.
Meanwhile, Indian refineries using this discounted crude have become essential to Europe's fuel supply. Diesel and jet fuel imports from India reached 154,000 barrels per day, double the amount before Russia's Ukraine invasion. And this reliance has raised questions about the efficacy of the sanctions altogether, as Russian revenues indirectly grow through third-party refiners and complex supply chains. "16 years ago, a digital revolution began with the release of the Bitcoin white paper.
Bitcoin went from being a far-flung concept to a household name as the year passed. Since its inception, the adoption of the OG crypto token has widened and penetrated the portfolios of large institutional investors.
Well, on October 31st, 2008, a mysterious figure known as Satoshi Nakamoto unveiled a groundbreaking concept that would forever change the landscape of finance, and that was Bitcoin. This 9-page white paper titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, was built as an introduction to the OG crypto token. Bitcoin has since challenged traditional notions of money, inspired countless innovations in blockchain technology, and paved the way for a new era of decentralized finance.
Bitcoin has transformed the way we think about money and value. Top financial institutions have figured out how to make crypto-focused financial goods, and investors have jumped right in. However, the Bitcoin has seen extreme fluctuations in the recent months as well.
Now, this is driven by regulatory changes, market sentiment, and technological advancements. Bitcoin's price has fallen by half or 4 times from its 2010 introduction and early 2024. It hit its first record high of $69,000 in November of 2021, but dropped below $20,000 by the end of 2022. This year, it hit a new record of nearly $74,000 in March after the SEC approved spot Bitcoin ETFs in January.
Last week, following Donald Trump's victory at the polls, the token hit a fresh high of over $76,000. Since then, the bull rally has continued, with the top token racing past $81,000 for the first time ever on Monday. Now that the top token is is in a historic record run on Trump trade bets. The momentum is gaining more traction.
If the bets in the futures market are anything to go by, the top token's record-breaking run has just about started. Wall Street investors who gambled billions of dollars on Bitcoin ETFs are now reaping their bets' rewards. Trump's march to the White House ignited record trading volumes at the world's largest Bitcoin ETF fund.
Futures suggest the rally in Bitcoin will gain momentum, with large bets on the token to hit $100,000 on the rise. Investors believe that Trump's re-election will mark the beginning of a new age for digital currencies. The sentiment is driven by the growing acceptance of crypto assets in traditional financial markets. The US may soon reclaim its position as the global leader in the crypto space, and that's what Trump vowed during his campaign and what industry leaders are hoping materializes.
As Bitcoin celebrates its 16th anniversary, its impact on the global financial system is undeniable.
Let's now see what's making news in the world of technology. According to reports, the US has ordered Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, one of the leading semiconductor companies in the world, to stop the shipments of its advanced chips to China. The US government has reportedly sent a letter to TSMC imposing export restrictions on certain chips they believe could be used by China to build powerful AI systems and graphics units. The ruling does not pose a blanket ban on the sale of TSMC chips to China. It does, however, make it mandatory for TSMC to verify how and where chips will be used. The US order comes just weeks after the discovery of TSMC chips in Huawei, who is an AI processor. The company, which is a Chinese tech company, has been designated as a national security threat by the US and is a part of the restricted trade list.
According to Google Trends report, there was a 400% increase in searches for how to move to Canada during the counting of the US presidential election votes. The highest number of searches came from states that heavily supported Vice President Kamala Harris, including states like Vermont, Oregon, and Washington. Moreover, Canada-related searches saw more than 5,000% increase on the day Trump's victory was confirmed. Apart from Canada, countries such as Japan, Brazil, and Costa Rica were among the other countries most searched for.
Cutting-edge technologies, brain-computer interfaces, and robots were on display at the recently concluded China International Import Expo. The expo attracted over 3,000 exhibitors from 129 countries and regions. Forpheus, a table tennis training robot, was one of the biggest highlights at the event. Using AI, the table tennis playing robot then decides whether to hit the ball by forehand or backhand return. Meanwhile, visitors at the expo were served refreshing drinks by a bartending robot as well. Using AI algorithm and emotion recognition technology, the robot matches the visitor's mood to generate a customized soft drink recipe. Launched in 2018, the expo aims to support trade liberalization and economic globalization and open up the Chinese market.
Next up, let's take a look at what's making news in sports. Chelsea and Arsenal shared the spoils in a tense 1-1 draw at Stamford Bridge in the English Premier League. The London rivals were equally matched and were unable to break the deadlock in the first. David Raya.